So Jimmy DeButz, I'd like to open by highlighting Jimmy DeButz, our shipmate editor, who conceived this entire Legacy of Valor series. So if you've been following us through World War II, Korea, and now Vietnam, Jimmy has been telling the stories of our alumni and how they served these conflicts and capturing the stories from living World War II veterans, and we still have a few of them among our alumni, and now through Vietnam. So I know it's a labor of love for Jimmy, and Jimmy, I'm just glad to see it arrive here now with this wonderful Vietnam panel. We've had great interest from all of our members in this series, and we know that the leadership lessons that are coming out of it are just as applicable for the midshipmen today as those who learn these lessons the hard way. So today we've got an esteemed panel of Vietnam veterans, and we're grateful to them for being here. We're grateful to the entire generation who served in Vietnam. Among our alumni, we had 174 who made the ultimate sacrifice during Vietnam, and 39 of our alumni were POWs during Vietnam. And we've been telling their stories in the recent issue of Shipmate, and you will see more through various communications channels this summer. I'll say that when I entered the SEAL teams in 1995, we were lucky that we still had some senior officers and senior enlisted who had been part of the Vietnam generation. And the training that we received, a lot of it was still from that era. A lot of the tactics and techniques that we were practicing were learned in Vietnam and are carried down, and I know there's still an element of how SEALs operate today. So those men in Vietnam, the men with green faces, were my heroes then, and they still are today. And I can tell you that all four gentlemen on this panel today, I knew about them before I met them, just to give you a sense of the esteem that they're held within the Naval Special Warfare community. To the midshipmen in the room, to the tadpoles, I will say you should be on full receive mode today, because I promise you that if you listen closely and take some notes, you will find at least one nugget that you will carry with you throughout your entire career. So I encourage you to enjoy this and listen closely. So this panel is going to be moderated by Admiral Natter, who you'll hear from in a minute. And he's going to be talking about Naval Special Warfare in Vietnam and how Naval Special Warfare learned to fight in the jungle, learned how to fight in a riverine environment and a guerrilla warfare environment. He is a leader not just for his naval career, but I'll tell you what he has done for our community after his naval career is unbelievable. He was the chairman of our Alumni Association board. He currently sits on the Naval Academy Foundation board, and we are in the Natter room right now. Not only did he contribute as one of the major donors of this building, he was effectively the general contractor for this building. He is a one-man wrecking ball who will not be stopped. And I promise you, we would not be in this building today able to have this panel without his tenacity and ferocity. And as we talk through this panel today, maybe you'll learn a little bit about where that all came from. So before we get started, I do want to welcome especially all of our SEAL visitors in the room, and I would just invite all of the SEALs in the room to please stand up, or UET members. Stay standing. I'd like to also be joined, if you've ever served within the Naval Special Warfare community, if you're an intel officer, anybody else who's served, please stand up as well. Thank you all for your service, and I'm now pleased to introduce Admiral Natter to kick off the panel.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to just sit here and relax a little bit and let these guys do all the talking. First of all, let me introduce Tom Murphy to my left. Tom Murphy's a class of 66. We got Cindy Prouty to my right and Dick Couch to my right. They're classmates of mine, class of 67. What's interestingly, I think, was not part of the plan here, but we're all in the same company and battalion, all 6 battalion people out of 7 people going Naval Special Warfare or SEALs out of 67. I think 4 of them came from our company, Dick, didn't it? So how that happened, what we caught, who knows? But it worked. So I'm really proud to be here with these gentlemen. What you're here today to do is listen to what they have to say. So I'd like to open this up with quite a space where you came from. These guys are pioneers, they really are. At the Naval Academy in the 60s, you went surface warfare, submarines, or aviation, or Marine Corps. It's that simple. Nobody had the option to go Naval Special Warfare directly. So I'd like to ask each one of them, what got you interested in going Naval Special Warfare, and how the hell did you manage to do it? Tom, you want to start?
Appreciate everybody being here. Let's see, backing up, as the Admiral just said, there was no alternative to go to SEALs for any of us in that era. SEALs weren't considered a legitimate career path for people coming out of the Naval Academy. Pretty much everybody who did make it into the SEALs went there left or right first and got back into it as soon as they could, in most cases. My own case, I think I started junior year looking at UDT as probably a real good opportunity, which wasn't available. Something about being a frogman, Mediterranean cruises, beach volleyball, that kind of thing. And then I was going to be a pilot. That's what I thought I was going to do on graduation. I had a refractive error. Long story short, I became an NFO, but wasn't nearly as happy to be in an airplane not flying it. Started putting in chits and wound up then into the UDT training program, which suited me just perfectly at the time. Got to UDT 22 for about 2 weeks before I got sent over to SEAL Team 2. That made going into combat a certainty. Started to take life a little more seriously at that point.
So, Sandy, how'd you get interested in this business?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Well, let me say first that there are some heroic guys out in this audience. Their stories are just as good, if not better than mine, and I'm so glad to see all of them here. But I think the way I got started was second class year, and some of you probably remember this, classmates. We had there was a demo out on the river, and we had the stand set up in by the seawall. And the first time I'd ever seen anything to do with UDT. UDT did a demo. They did a helo cast, swam in on the Severn, and then stood in front of us with looking like real tough guys with all of their equipment. They talked about the mission. They talked about the challenge of buds. And I, at the time, I was a pretty good runner and a pretty good swimmer, and the whole idea of a lifestyle like that was intriguing to me. But I have to say, about 15 years, there's a rest of the story. About 15 years later, when I was in the FBI, I ran into an FBI agent who had been in the teams. Told him about that experience, and he said, hey, I was part of that. He's older than I was. He said, hey, I was part of that demo. And it wasn't what you thought. He said, we smeared this jellyfish, anti-jellyfish cream on us. Everybody knows that the Severn is filled with jellyfish in July and August. And he said, China Lake had invented it. We smeared it on it, and it worked great. We jumped in the water, jellyfish all over the place. But as we started swimming in, it started coming off. By the time we got to the seawall, he said, I had welts all over my body. He said, it was just as painful as can be. And he says, when I was standing up there looking tough, he said, I had all I could do to keep from crying.
Thanks, Dick. How'd you get into this?
Well, in 1953, my mother took me to see a movie at Indiana University called The Silent World by Jacques Cousteau. And for a young kid in a farm town in southern Indiana, this was magic. I said right then and there, I want to be a frogman. And that became, I want to be a Navy frogman. There was a very sparse recruitment for potential midshipmen in southern Indiana, so I came to the Naval Academy. And one of my highlights here was when my company was visiting the soup, Draper Kaufman, and I said, Admiral, I'm planning on being a frogman, and he literally put his arm around me and said, son, you can be a pilot, you can be a surface warfare or a submariner. And I said, well, my eyes and my grades aren't that good, so there's 2 out of 3. So I became a surface warfare officer, and I'm proud to be one, but I had the dream early to become a Navy frogman. Although once I became a Navy frogman, I saw nothing but rice paddies and brown water and none of that blue-green water that Jacques Cousteau swam in.
Thanks very much. Those are good, interesting historical realities with what existed at the time. Now, I know BUD/S was just as tough in those days as it is today. I'd like you to tell me how many folks started in your class, how many finished, and then, more importantly, after you graduated, what kind of training did you receive to go to Vietnam, work in the jungles, and was it adequate at the time? Tom?
Let's see, we started with 180, we graduated 40. We did have a class of 13 officers, and 13 officers graduated. It can be done. The long story short was going to the SEALs was an abrupt change of pace from going from being a frogman to being a SEAL. The training never stopped the whole time. I was 25 years in the SEALs, and it never stops. But before going to Vietnam the first time, I guess I'd gone to Army Ranger School, which was a treat in itself in the middle of a cold winter. That 2 months, and then after that we had language training, we had kitchen demolition school, we had jump training, the Army jump school training, we had Halo training, skipping over probably a couple of them. Then you had pre-deployment workup, which was when you got ready with your platoon to actually go do what you were going to go do. I missed a couple schools, but you get the idea. It just never stops once you become a SEAL.
Sandy?
Well, I was in class 47, BUD/S 47. I had 83 folks in my class, and 23 graduated. 2 were rollback from the class in front of me. So I went to SEAL Team. I was originally scheduled to go to UDT, but in the middle of training, they changed me to SEAL Team 1. And I reported to SEAL Team 1, finished training at the end of November, reported to SEAL Team 1 in December, got married, 3-day honeymoon, came back. My wife insisted we were going to get married before I deployed. Anyway, I came back in December. In January, Mike Collins, who was the ops officer, he's later killed in action, said, okay, proud of you taking over a Mike platoon. You're leaving in August, and you got 6 months to do your pre-deployment training. Now, that's not the way it is today. Today, once you finish BUD/S, there's a lot more training, and it's all formalized, and you're in much better shape. But I couldn't believe that I was going to be in charge of preparing 14 men to go to Vietnam with only having had BUD/S training. But anyway, I had 4 guys in my platoon who had gone over before, including the leading petty officer who had gone over 3 times. And with all of them, with all their help, we put together a really good, what I thought was a really good pre-deployment training. And when we left from North Island, and my wife drove me over there. There was a few little tears there. But anyway, when we left from North Island, we had, I felt like we were in pretty good shape.
Good. Dick?
Yeah, I trained
In the wintertime, too.
That's inside.
Yeah.
of training on the East Coast. And I had orders to UDT, made a short deployment there before going out to SEAL Team 1. At that time, what I felt was most beneficial in preparing us for Vietnam is the guys who came back held kind of a informal training course about here's what's going on and here's what you got to do to keep your guys safe. Here's what you got to do to navigate the political system that you'll go into because you're going to be working probably in an Army or a Marine Corps AO, and how to go about that. And it was invaluable training. That and there was a cadre training within SEAL teams when you got there, at least to Team 1 and Team 2, and I did both of those. They helped prepare you as well. And what they have become is the forerunner of what you guys are going to go through at SQT. So we had the ability to train in-house to the exact mission we were going to be doing. It wasn't rocket science, it was jungle warfare, and the teams coming back prepared us well for what we had to do when we went over.
Great. Dick, I'd like you to bring back this way. The next follow-on the question to that, how much did you have to learn on the fly once you were over in theater?
Well, we were blessed. We relied on the veterans. I had my platoon chief, and 10 of the 14 guys in my platoon were all out of training. I had a first-class petty officer that Admiral Natter knows well, and he was on his 6th rotation. We did pretty much what he said and how he said to do it. Also, while at least in my AO, what I depended upon a great deal was we had 6 Vietnamese scouts that were former VC. They were mercenaries. We paid them. They lived with us, and they fought with us. And whenever we planned an operation, they were integral to that and to helping us stay safe. And if they came to a place and said, we don't go down this path ever, we never went down that path. So I think it was a combination of the veterans you could count on in your platoon, and then some of the indigenous people that were passed down from platoon to platoon once you got in this country and started operating.
Sandy?
Yeah, just one thought that came to mind. When Jeff mentioned that he had, when he got into teams, he had some Vietnam vets. When I went through training, we actually had World War II vets that were instructors.
Yeah.
Jurek was anyway, he wasn't a rate grabber either. He was still a first class. Anyway, so I same as Dick, I think. I mean, I had 4 guys. I was fortunate to have 4 guys who had been over before. They displayed a lot of leadership, particularly my leading petty officer. I didn't have a chief. I had a first class. Believe it or not, he was a first class yeoman too. How does a yeoman become a SEAL? But anyway, he was good at what he did. He was, if I got carried away, he was so good about saying, "Sir, I don't think that's a good idea." And fortunately, and that's something for all of you screeners, is you don't need to know everything. Listen to your petty officers. Listen to your petty officers what they tell you, because they do have a lot of wisdom. And just like Dick, we had some scouts, some Vietnamese scouts. One was killed. They were excellent. They were dedicated, and I feel badly that we left some of them behind.
Yeah. Tom?
I'd go along with everything that's just been said. You can't underestimate the value of having an interpreter who speaks the language. You can't underestimate the value of actually having people working for you to help you gather intelligence. SEAL Ops, very direct and on the ground. So a lot of the intelligence that was coming our way from on high just simply wasn't correct. Way before GPSs, way before we knew where we were going. We were still using a compass and a paceman. We'd often be sent out to do something, and we get to the place we're sent to, and there's nothing there. I think a lot of those problems have probably been solved, but the idea of having people you can really trust who are locals, our line of work, overestimate its importance. That's about all I'd add.
Dick, I'm sure you remember Joe DiMartino, who was over there with us, World War II veteran, Normandy invasion.
Utah
Korea.
Beach.
Yep.
In fact, I asked him, I said, isn't this war a little anticlimactic for you? And he said, it only takes 1 round. Right. Great guy. You're right. Do you think the 6-month deployment cycle that we were in was about right or not? Should it have been a little longer to get better acclimated and trained, or should it have been shorter, or about right?
Is that for me,
Sandy?
Bob?
We'll start with Sandy. Put him
Well, yes, I think about it. I operated every other night, so during that 6-month period, so I lost about 40 pounds. I'm not going to tell that, Betty, don't worry. So I lost 40 pounds, and I lost a lot of sleep, too. So I think 6 months was about right. My second tour in Vietnam, I trained Vietnamese SEALs, and it was a year tour. And the op tempo was much slower and about right for that. So, no, I think 6 months is about right.
Tom, what do you think? Same thing?
Yeah, I think it was right. I might mention we had a CNO at the time, Admiral Zumwalt, really an incredible CNO in my opinion. At the time, we were going back-to-back 6-month tours to Vietnam, and some of the SEALs had had 5- and 6-month tours, but still we were not qualifying for 1 year unaccompanied, meaning after 3 or 4 tours over there, they'd still get sent over for a full year. We got a chance to go talk to the Admiral about things that were bothering the SEAL program, along with every other part of the Navy. He gave his staff 30 days to have the Navy tell him why he couldn't do every single thing we wanted to see fixed. Never seen a leader do that since, but it changed the rotation schedule for SEALs enormously. Guys that had been over there 2 or 3 times at 6 months at a time didn't have to go back for 1 full year by themselves. little things like that that added up to a big deal for SEAL program at the time.
Great. Dick, you got anything on that?
I'll just say I think the 6-month rotation was good. Back then it was different. Officers, if you got 2 rotations in combat into Vietnam, you were pretty much either getting out of the Navy or you're too senior to take a platoon. So the 6-month was a good rotation primarily for the enlisted guys because some of those were on their 5th, 6th, 7th tour. And to ramp them up for a full year away from home when they're going back again and again was probably too much. So I think the 6 months served us pretty well.
Next one's kind of a contrary to what's going on today. The SEALs in those days, what kind of operational support did you have? Overhead satellites didn't exist. Most of the radios weren't very good. A lot of people in Saigon thought they were in charge. They really weren't. What's your take on your support and your intel support and the rest of it to plan your operations that were pretty frequent? Dick, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I'll do that is I think first thing you do today for all you guys when you meet your first platoons and for us back then, as soon as you got to an AO, the first thing is you're going to work for somebody, and it's probably going to be somebody in the Army. So to the extent you have to go recruit them to tell them what can I do to help you, sir? And here's how we work, and here are some of the things that are important to us as we undertake our duties. We had pretty much in Vietnam, nobody really sent us in the field, and there was no command structure. Typically, we moved into an AO, we made friends with the pilots, we made friends with any of the other advisors around there who could help us with finding good targeting and good intelligence, recruited them to our cause, and then making sure that when we cleared for operations, we cleared an area that we're going to be in, what have you, that we told the right people what we were doing and who was going to be there, and also to let especially the Seawolf pilots and the OV-10 pilots, the Black Ponies, know who we were and where we were, because those guys were vital. If you get into trouble, you're going to have them come and help you out. Sometimes there was an Army or Marine unit available too that could act as a QRF to help you out too, but everything was done pretty much pro forma by you as you set up and went into operations in your area.
Interesting. Tom, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think the long and the short of it is the support that you get when you're in a firefight from overhead is critical. You start out by being the hunter and you turn into being the hunted right away. So everything that was available to us over there largely we made our own arrangements prior to going out on every mission. Pretty much every SEAL operation over there was squad size. My experience was the same as Dick and Sandy's. We go on 60 missions probably in the course of 6 months and make contact on about 30 of them. In military terms, that's called a target-rich environment. You didn't have to go very far to make contact. Basically, the feeling was, you insert, set up your ambush, or you start your patrol, you make contact, you kill as many people as possible, and you retreat. You get yourself a night off, and you go do it the following night. But the overhead support from OV-10s, from Seawolves in particular, is critical, not only from the fire support point of view, but help you get out with your wounded. As soon as you needed their help, they were pretty much always overhead.
Sandy, you got anything on that?
Well, I can just add a little bit. I mean, you got to remember back then, SEALs were brand new. They were 5 or 6 years old. I don't think the Navy, the big Navy, had any idea of how to use them or how to support them. Of course, that's different today. I mean, today they build subs that are designed to support SEALs. But back then, I agree with what Dick and Tom said. I mean, the important thing was to establish relationships with your support systems, the Seawolves, the Swift boats, boat support. And I say Seawolves particularly because those guys were always there. They were accurate. And one of my Seawolf pilots, Buddy Barnes, is right here today. And he flew, and those guys were critical. And you know what? I mean, they're professional no matter who they're flying for. But if you're flying for a friend, you might be willing to take, and he's in a tight spot, you might be willing to take a little bit more risk to get him out of there. And that's why what Dick said, make friends with all of your support people. Make sure they know who you are and spend time with them.
I might say one more thing about our boat support people, because without the boat support people that have supported Spec War throughout our history, we can't get in, we can't get out. There's a lot of innovation that went on in Vietnam. You'd steal a sampan and use sampans to go in or out or whatever. But the point is, our Mike boat support, our LSSC teams, all the boat support people that we had that worked in our boat support units were critical to our operations throughout the entire war.
And that's what Admiral Natter did, and he did a terrific job. I know that the boat supports, those guys would come in. If you were under fire, they'd extract you. I know many instances where they came in under fire, including the one where Admiral Natter had a Silver Star, where they come in under fire and extract you, and they were vital to our mission.
And I might add for you midshipmen there, treat your classmates nice, because Admiral Natter back then was my company mate, and I went on leave with him. I saw him every day of my life while I was at the Naval Academy, and lo and behold, he was the boat support officer for my platoon and pulled us out of a lot of nasty situations. So
that's great.
you never know when the guy down the hall is going to come to your rescue.
Yep, that's right.
Well, the worst part was I didn't get much sleep. Sandy mentioned going out every other night. We went over with 10 guys and we supported 2 platoons, an LD&N platoon. And guess what? They wanted to go out every other night. The next platoon wanted to go out every other night. There are not that many nights in a night. So we were pretty busy. But we had great people. The beauty is, and I want to get into the next point, y'all have already hit on it. How are your enlisted people? And this is a lot of these people were draftees, especially in the boat units.
Yeah.
And so how did you find your enlisted people, and were they as good as they are today? Yeah.
They were the backbone of Mike Platoon, and they were the backbone of SEAL Team 1. I always thought they were tough, savvy, and fearless. I trusted them with my life. I had no reservations about doing that. And I'm just thinking about just an example of that. My point man, Tom Wagner, was part Indian. He was out on point one day, and he heard a click, and he was afraid he had stepped on a pressure release mine. He sent the whole squad back in a protective area, and then he leapt off what he thought was a mine, and sure enough, it was. It exploded. Thank goodness it was more demolition explosive than there was shrapnel, so the shrapnel didn't get him, but he severely wrenched his knee, and coming after he came back to the States, several operations never made it quite right. But that selfless act on his part saved some guys, definitely saved some guys from getting hurt, maybe worse, and I saw many enlisted men do similar acts.
Dick, I know you had some great people.
Yeah, we relied on our enlisted men, and you guys that are going off to BUDS, we're going to find that you're going to have the privilege of working with some of the very, very best. But you can't abandon your responsibilities. I know, and I learned this primarily on my tour as a surface warfare on a destroyer, is you have to know your people, know who can do what and who you can count on. And pretty soon, and you're going to find that in your SEAL platoons the same. You've got some people that can do certain things, and you can trust them and turn your back on them, and others you're going to have to watch. And you've got to know who they are and what they can do and what they can't do, and plan around them or plan with them accordingly.
So let me get into some specifics. What was your most interesting or area?
When I really look at the number of ops that we were making contact, they were all pretty similar in my couple tours. I think the ones that get noted are the ones where they got more people that get shot and you capture more weapons, I suppose. I went out on 2 POW missions. We were not successful in either one. One of them, the intelligence just got us in the wrong part of the world. One of them, we just happened to miss the American pilot that came through there a couple of days before we got there. Hard work. I think there was something like, serves, I guess, 2,500 Americans during the course of the war that were either MIA or POW. There's probably 100 missions trying to capture them and release them. There were probably only about 20 successful ones. So I was never lucky enough to be one of those kind of missions. We had a very successful tour from the point of view of engaging the enemy, but we were also in a part of the world where you could throw a rock outside the compound where we were, go out there and set up an ambush and probably locate some enemy. So kind of lucky in that regard. Also will say something that I don't know whether or not it ever occur again, but we benefited by not having that every moment oversight that you guys are going to have.
Amen.
It take 2 days to send a message back to the United States and 2 days to get a reply. My favorite words was, "you know, dear," at the time. Unless otherwise directed, I intend to do this, that, or the other thing. Since nobody could ever answer in time before you'd done it, quite a bit of freedom, which made everything.
Beautiful. Sandy?
So my most significant operation, we went into the POW camp, which is where we got all of our intel. We found a VC who had turned himself in the day before. He was willing to help us. He said he could lead us into a big medical cache in the Namcan area. So we set off by a helo, we inserted. Sure enough, he led us right to the medical cache. We started loading up all the bandages and surgical equipment in a cargo net that we hung under our helicopter, couldn't land it. But immediately we started receiving fire. The helicopter pilot said, "Hey, I've been hit a couple of times. I'm afraid I got hit in the rotor. I can't stay. I'm gone." He took off and he left us there. And what followed was a run-in, kind of a run-in protracted gunfight. The Sea Wolves were on station. We called them, thank goodness, and they put plenty of rounds down, but they couldn't suppress the fire enough to get us back out of there. So they scrambled OV-10s, and I think everybody knows what OV-10 is, but they have the 20 millimeter cannon in addition to what the Sea Wolves have. And they came in several rounds, several shots that they took, and again, they were having trouble suppressing the fire. In fact, one interesting side note, the pilot of the OV-10 called down and said, "Hey, is there any SEAL down there from 1614 McGill Avenue in Coronado?" It was my next door neighbor, Charlie Sapp, out of the class of 65. And Betty and his wife were probably having coffee that morning. Just amazing. Anyway, they couldn't suppress the fire. They called in A-37s, which was tricked out with bombs, 500-pound bombs, dropped 500-pound bombs. One, I thought they dropped one on me. It was a huge, it felt like an earthquake. My eardrums, I thought I'd blown my eardrums, dirt and stones and everything on me. But no, they were accurate, and they did suppress the fire. So thank goodness. So in came the replacement helicopter, and we all ran out to it, jumped in, and breathed a sigh of relief. But it started bouncing along the field. And the panicked pilot looks back and he says, "I can't, it's too heavy. Somebody's got to get off." So I jumped off. I'm the platoon leader. And I took my machine gunner and my radioman, and my leading petty officer jumped off too on his own. So there we were down there. I thought it was only a matter of time. The VC saw what happened. It was only a matter of time before they started moving in on us. Tried to come up with an E&E plan, and the only one I could think of was a river nearby. I thought maybe we could get to the river and swim out of there. But a really bad plan. I didn't want to do that. But then the Sea Wolf called down and said, "Hey, I'm going to come down and try to pick you up." So he threw everything, I learned later, he threw everything out of the helicopter. He threw the guns out, the ammo out, anything he could to lighten it up, and came down and picked us up. We ran out. My machine gunner took a round through his ammo box on the way out. Sure, the helicopter took a few rounds. Anyway, he took off, and we did breathe a sigh of relief, but it wasn't quite over yet, because he said, "Hey, my red fuel light has been on for 5 minutes. I'm out of gas." And sure enough, he got up about 1,000 feet. The engine sputtered and quit. But fortunately, he was able to auto-rotate down. He auto-rotated down into the government of South Vietnam outpost. So from my standpoint, the operation was successful because nobody got hurt in my platoon. Later, intel said that we inadvertently had landed into a big group of VC, and actually we had decimated them with 24 KIAs. And the only reason the helicopter couldn't get off was we had hand-landed, initially inserted with a Kilo model, which is the latest model, and we had a lot of power, but the replacement one was an old Delta model, and it didn't have the power.
Right. Dick, you have one?
Yeah, I was trying to think. Certainly, I remember POW operation, and I was fortunate enough to have a very successful one. But kind of as you look back through the collage of all the things that go on during that, when that happens, one I do recall on that particular mission is that it was very important that we get into the camp without being detected. So it was, if you suspect they catch you coming in, they're going to kill the hostages or they're going to move them. And so you've got to be very careful going in. So as we were going in, there were checkpoints, and we managed to, there was 2 sentry posts on the canal where we went in, and I sent my scouts out, and they captured the first guy and took care of him, and the second guy they took alive, and they brought him to me, and I wanted to know what's up around the corner. You know, how many guys are we facing? Is this something we can handle or not? And the guy wouldn't talk to me. Of course, I'm sweating. I've got my face is all green. So I take out my knife and I put it in his throat, and I said, tell the interpreter, I said, tell this guy if he doesn't tell me what I want to know, I'm going to kill him. And so the interpreter does this, and the guy looks at me and shakes his head. He's not going to tell me. Now what do? One of my ex-Viet Cong scouts taps me on the shoulder and said, he'd like to talk to the guy. And he said about 5 words to this guy, and I couldn't shut him up. He was just talk. So after things, you know, we were up all day. The mission was a success, and we were getting lots of kudos. I found that scout, and I said, I got to know what you said to that guy. And through the interpreter, he couldn't answer it. He just told the guy, you know who I am, and you know what I'll do to you, and it's worse than dying. And so you always have to be flexible on an operation, and if you want to know more about Sandy's operation, all you got to do is read SEAL Team 1, because I took a lot of incidents that happened to somebody else and put them in that book. So, and that was a good one that he was on. At any rate, Bob.
Thanks. Last questions, and then I'll open it up for any closing statements before we open it up to the audience to ask questions. In the days when we were all in Naval Special Warfare and you were SEALs, I think the most senior person in the community was a captain, not much of a career path. Was that a concern ever to you about potential for future, growth and career, Sandy?
But absolutely not. Man. When I got into the teams, I knew, first of all, I was not admiral material. And secondly, I only wanted to make lieutenant so I could keep operating. And I never looked at the promotion. But I have to admit, though, I got married, had a daughter, and I matured, and things changed. And I realized, because I had really, out of the first 3 years of our marriage, I was gone 28 months. I had 3 tours in a row. And so I decided I would I prefer to have a little bit slower tempo. And I did look at the promotional structure, but I still knew I wasn't admiral material.
So the question is, when did you mature?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to come soon. I mean, pretty soon.
Tom.
I didn't want to do anything other than be a lieutenant chief forever. That was a deal I made with myself. They just leave me alone, I'll cut that deal with the Navy. There wasn't a career path at the time. Actually, there was a captain, I guess, somewhere in the world who had some background with spec war, but there was no way to get to be a captain. I was a spec war officer at the time. Team COs were lieutenants when we first got to UDT, and then they were lieutenant commanders, and that was the height that you could ever hope to get to be. So promotion was not an issue. Being a member of a team was the thing, and that's what everybody here will learn as they go through BUD/S. You're going to be a unique relationship with the enlisted people you work with. You're going to be a unique relationship with everybody in that community. So it's a special part of the Navy. It really is.
Dick, what's your...
No, I knew at the time it was a non-starter, and I had Admiral Draper Kaufman tell me it was a non-starter, so it was pretty well a closed issue there. I was lucky, though, after I left the active duty, I was at CIA for a period of time doing much the same thing, so I got an extension on my childhood a little bit from doing that.
Well, let me just say for the record, being an admiral, the best rank in the Navy was a lieutenant. You knew enough to be dangerous, but they didn't know enough about you whether to treat you right or wrong. So it was great. I hated being promoted beyond that, because then they thought I was in it for a different reason. But you need to go into something that's rewarding, and there's nothing more rewarding than this community, in my view. Let me just say that we need to open this up now to the audience for questions. But before we do, anything in summary you guys want to address that you haven't addressed already? Okay.
I'll just say one quick thing if it's got time. You don't want to learn to trust anybody at the SEAL team when you get to the SEAL team. You're going to be new officers, and the first thing you're going to do is to find out what kind of guy you are. Just tell one quick story. My very first couple weeks of SEAL Team 2, I was given my squad, told to go over to a church and give Boy Scouts Sunday afternoon show and tell with your squad. Well, some of those guys have been 2 or 3 tours in Nam, and nobody wanted to go do this. I wasn't paying much attention, went out to talk to we all had our weapons and camo. I go out to talk to the man in charge, come back. We march them into the church. We're going to talk to the kids and the scout leaders. I've got my weapon over here, pointed straight at the roof. I touch the trigger, and it goes off at full automatic.
Oh, shit.
They were blanks, but I'm telling you guys this for a reason. You're going to get tested, and you always want to be sure that you pay a lot of attention, particularly as you get to the team. It doesn't get easier just because you got there.
Okay. You guys good? We'll open it up to questions.
Sure.
Okay, questions from the audience. Yes, sir.
Dave Church, 67 for Sandy. I'd like to tell the people here what. Do I really need this? What you took from the teams when you and the FBI set up the first hostage rescue team.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, thank you, Dave. I'll try to make that quick. So it was invaluable. The FBI set up the hostage rescue team, which is like a super SWAT team, in 1982, and we had, I'm trying to remember, I think we had, there was 52 men, and there was a selection process. We had 18 vets, including 4 SEALs, including Tommy Norris, who was a Medal of Honor recipient, and Don Glasser and Phil King. And it was invaluable. We set up a maritime, we set up a maritime capability, and we had the opportunity to train with SEAL Team 6. Dick Marcinko was the demo. Dick was the commanding officer, and I felt very confident in my ability to set up a brand new and start up a brand new team with the abilities and the experiences that I had, and that also made me the training officer for the whole hostage rescue team. So I haven't had experience in doing that kind of thing. I think we had a pretty successful effort in standing us up. And actually, the hostage rescue team has been used many, many times. I was in 2 firefights in the FBI on the hostage rescue team, and since they've been used in many, many difficult, very, very difficult hostage rescue situations.
Anybody else? Questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
First of all, I'm honored to be here in front of this greatness, and I'm humbled by it. Class of 80 from the Naval Academy. The SEALs wasn't big when we were graduating from school, but the more I was in service, I said, how do these men get through this training and how do they carry on their operations? So I want to ask all 4 of you, I always say to myself, could I have ever done it? What got you through? What was the one trait that you relied on in training or when you were in a hairy situation that got you through?
There's an unwillingness to quit. The biggest thing is you just don't quit. And if you're getting real close to thinking you're going to quit, look around and see who's probably going to quit before you do. Let that guy quit first. Don't do it first. That'll keep you going. There's not a lot of ways to say it. You're going to be miserable. If you want it and don't quit, you end up getting through it.
Right.
So I was on a cruiser before I volunteered for UDT, and I didn't like being aboard ship at all, especially on a cruiser. I was in CIC, everybody was smoking, and it's just you couldn't get out and work out, and it really was, I just didn't like it. I just didn't admire anybody that goes to the fleet. I think it's wonderful. but it just wasn't for me. So that's what kept me going. I knew if I quit, I was going to have to go right back to that shit. And I couldn't do that.
Dick?
Well, I had very positive experiences on a destroyer before I did that, but I think that, it's tough to say that this institution prepares you to do anything, and plebe year is not an easy thing. So for the 4 years you spent here and the disciplines you develop, I think you're well prepared to do that. And one point that I'd like to make that I didn't make it before, all you guys that are selectees going to training, think long and hard about doing this and know that it is a very dangerous business. I'm the only one of the people sitting up here who doesn't have a Purple Heart and wasn't wounded in combat and doesn't have a Silver Star. So inventory, as you go through your training and what have you, you're preparing to go into a very dangerous business. But give that some thought and share that with your family before you go into it.
There was a question over here in the back. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I wish the whole brigade was here. This was fantastic, just unbelievable, and also a privilege to be here. As a former PAO, we always used to say there's no such thing as bad PR, but I wonder what you gentlemen think, where very little was known about the SEALs, and now it's a very different world, and there's part of me that thinks it's fantastic, and that people are more aware of the incredible things that you all did. And there's also a piece of me that says, I wonder if we know more than we should. I'd be very interested to know what would be done.
I liked it the old way. I liked it when they didn't even know what the word SEAL meant. That's not going to come back again. You have to live with the publicity. Every SEAL's got to use his own discernment, discrimination about what to say, who to say it to, and when to say it. SEAL work is hard work, but it's at the tip of the sword. It's not the easiest job on earth, and anybody that tells you it's not going to be stressful. I didn't give that nearly enough thought in the beginning, I don't guess. Over the years, stay with it. Build up on not only you, but on the family and people that you love. It's a tough line of work.
Sandy?
Well, so you're PAO, so you know how difficult it is to try to spin something bad that happens. And I hate to see, and bad things do happen. Like Dick said, somebody will drown doing, in the pool, or somebody will, pass out after a run and die. And it's sad, it's terrible. But the publicity that comes out is terrible too, and there's no perspective. And I just hate it when I see that. But it is a dangerous business, and I had a guy in my platoon killed. I mean, it's a dangerous business, and you have to recognize that. But the negative publicity is very unhealthy.
Dick?
I would just say again, for the selectees, you're going into a business where it's very transparent. In our day, there were no cell phones, there were no cameras, there were no, we control pretty much our environment and what came out of it publicly. You don't have that luxury, and anything you do that's unseemingly or reflects poorly on on our country, they're going to identify you as a Navy SEAL. It's going to get blown out of proportion. So you carry an extra obligation to do the right thing, even in or out of uniform.
And if you're ever in a fight, it's always the Marines that started it.
Question? Yes, sir.
Sandy, would you mind, for the crowd to know how tough SEALs are, just mention what Tom Norris's situation was when he was on the hostage rescue team with the FBI?
Yeah, Tom Norris is a great story. I mean, everybody, I think, knows the Medal of Honor guy, and he's, after 18 people were killed trying to rescue a major who had been shot down in North Vietnam, Tom did it by himself. But in the process, he went out on the next operation, and Dick wrote a great book about this, by Honor Bound. He went out with Mike Thornton, a third-class petty officer, and they ended up getting stumbling into a huge North Vietnamese unit.
Battalion.
And,
Battalion.
And Tom, a firefight, a huge firefight. They had 5 SEALs and 5 Vietnamese SEALs, and Tom and Mike. And anyway, to make a long story short, Tom got shot in the temple, blew out his eye. Mike saved him. Mike got the Medal of Honor for swimming out to sea with him and saving him. But I ran into Tommy because he was a friend from, trying to think, anyway, from somewhere along the line. Anyway, he was a friend of mine, and we convinced him that he should apply for the FBI. And, no, I can't. He said, I only got one eye. Well, the FBI, the recruiter up in Baltimore is where he went into that office, was a World War II Marine, and he said, I'm going to get this guy, and no matter what, and he did. And Tommy was just an incredible guy. He shot a perfect score and got on the board for having shot a perfect score down at Quantico. He worked as an undercover agent and in some big undercover operations. And as I looked okay, I mean, they did a good job. He liked to pull it out sometimes. Everybody, shock everybody. But anyway, he just did a terrific job. Nobody would have thought, and I'm so glad that I had the chance to work with him. Top-notch guy.
Yes, Joe.
John Greener, Class 75, deep admirer of Navy SEALs. Thank you. My question is logistics. Bob alluded to it a little bit, and I just wondered if you all could comment on the adequacy of your small arms and the ammunition. And Sandy, you mentioned losing a lot of weight. How did you keep up nutrition? Did you have adequate food, rations? And if not, how did you feed everybody long missions?
What, me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just say real
You
quick.
got lost the weight.
That's true. I put it all back on though pretty quick. But yeah, I mean, we on Sea Float, which was 9 barges tied together and anchored in the middle of a river, I worked there, and so did Dick, and there was no other base there, so we had to work off of that. All the Seawolves and the Swifts and boat support all worked off of that. And they had a chow hall. They bring in chow, and the sanitary conditions were very primitive. We lived in 2 shacks. So I don't know. I mean, I think it was really because not sleeping. Not sleeping is a good way to lose weight. And that's where I think it happened. Nutrition, I mean, it's probably okay. I don't even remember. It's edible. They had a cook there, and they had a cook shack. We all ate out in the open. Yeah, I probably could have done. Martha Stewart probably could have helped us a little bit at the time.
I could add one comment to that. The whole issue of procurement for Navy SEALs in the old days was you got to help yourself, because you could go around and ask the Marines for their Jeep or the Army guy for his Jeep, and you weren't going to get anybody giving you a Jeep. Nobody was issuing us Jeeps at the time either. So pretty obviously the first thing you do is you find yourself some bolt cutters. And you get a couple street smart guys out of your platoon, and we had to have 3 working Jeeps, or 2 working Jeeps, so you wanted 3 at all times. Real quick story, we were in Saigon overnight and had my Jeep, we had her all chained up, really big chains. Came back the next morning, it was gone. We decided to hike over to the EOD shack. We were really sister units with explosive ordnance demolition people there. And OIC there says to me, yeah, come on, I had to get back to Mito for an op that night. He said, we'll make some arrangements to get you guys back out there. Come on back, have a beer, and we'll figure out what we can do. We go into their backyard, and they're repainting my Jeep. And so, yeah, we got the new paint job and got it back to Mito. You got to be fairly resourceful. Procurement was a big issue. We had to provide pretty much everything except our own ammunition, and weapons, and camouflage gear.
Dick, do you have any?
I think that our weapons are standard infantry weapons. The only thing special is a Stoner rifle, which is the first iteration of what's a SAW today, the squad assault weapon. I think what probably was the best, because we could do anything we wanted and we didn't have the oversight or nobody to tell us we couldn't do it. We developed certain protocols in what we wore, like we always wore blue jeans because they're much more comfortable, they resist mosquitoes, and they're quieter as you move. When they get wet, you don't rub together like regular camouflage does. And we learned to waterproof certain things, and we carried a lot of our ammunition stuff around our chest because it formed body armor. So we could, and our M60 machine gunners some guys had a flex tube where they could have a continuous set of rounds coming into their weapon and not have to change bandoliers and what have you. So we could do a lot of different things on our own. And we took what the platoons ahead of us had done, used we looked at their gear, modified our gear so it looked like theirs, and then maybe a few personal changes. but it helped a lot. We could tailor our combat kit to who we were and the mission we had.
Yeah, let me just say as a commentary, the best weapon ever created for the U.S. Armed Forces is a 50 caliber machine gun. From World War I all the way to today. I can tell you that when we had one on our boat, I actually had a minigun on the stern and two 50s, one on either side. And the guys from Saigon came down and said, "We got some miniguns for you to replace those 50s." I said, "Get the hell out of here. You don't know what the hell you're talking about." We kept them. We actually got a aircraft 50 on there. Problem is, Dick and I were talking about it today, thing would overheat too fast and jam up on us, so we threw that away too. Jeff, you got something?
Yeah, I want to stick. You just described customizing gear, uniforms, weapons. And I think that's signature to the SEAL teams if you compare it to, say, the Marine Corps or the Army. Mm-hmm. Did the SEALs come into Vietnam with that creative mentality, or is that more adapting to the environment that you faced there?
Well, I think that they cherry-picked some of the UDT teams, took volunteers and certain criteria to make the first two SEAL teams, and they had nothing. So they had to start procurement, they had to do what kind of parachutes do we want to use. They weren't, initially, and then as it became, initially just to outfit themselves. Then as Vietnam became a bigger portion of what we were doing, they were just modifying gear to do it. And it's kind of endemic. It's part of our DNA. It's like they had certain waterproofing things to waterproof time fuse to blow up demolitions. And nothing worked as well as condoms and neoprene cement. And those developed that we developed because that worked. So that was kind of how things, it was kind of in our DNA. And so we put these things together, and we were not afraid to copy. If the Marines or the Army had a good idea, let's use it.
Yes, sir.
Andy Funky, class of 78. First, a comment and then a question. I met Lieutenant Commander Natter on my first ship. He was our XO. And a couple things I noticed. He was the most highly decorated mid-grade officer I'd ever seen before. And at that point, you knew he had earned them. As you get more senior, you get awards for just showing up. But the other thing is he was also incredibly hardworking, but demanded the same of his shipmates. And they did it willingly because they could see that he did it as well. And the third thing, he was a unique combination of, I think, being half crazy, but a lot of fun. And it served him well. My question for the panel is...
That's a paid political announcement, by the way. And I'm not running.
And I just found out today we share something in common, our families. He was one of 4 graduates from the Naval Academy in his family, and I was as well. But we also threw in a black sheep graduate from West Point. So, my question for the panel, you obviously had very close relationships and supporting one another. What about your families back home? They obviously knew that you were in a very dangerous job. Did they get together? Did they have support for one another? And how did that work out?
Communications back in the early days, certainly the Vietnam era, were really rudimentary. And trying to kind of communicate with your family was by letter, basically just by letter. Obviously, it's completely different today. But to answer the question about the families, being a SEAL family, being a SEAL wife, there should be more books written about that. But it's a difficult line of work to meet a SEAL, marry a SEAL, and then have him go off, not know if he's coming back tomorrow night, next week, next month, or next year. Meanwhile, you've got to do your thing, and then he comes back, and oftentimes he needs a little time to get himself back together after what he's been doing. So, it's not an easy lifestyle, but many men have found the right woman to go with them and do it. But it certainly was not easy.
Being single, it was easy.
Yeah.
Didn't worry about it. Yeah.
So this is not a paid political announcement at all, but Betty was, we were married back then, we've been married 56 years, and she hung in, despite the fact that I was gone for 28 months, She was right there, had a baby in the process, and stuck with me. And I think she'd probably say that there was a nice cadre of wives, like there is in every command, you know, a cadre of wives that support one another, good SEAL support wives, although many of them have passed on, unfortunately, at this point. But I think that was helpful. And again, yeah, the letters were the way we communicated. Here's number, and she had a relationship with the postman. He'd show up in the 1614 Miguel Avenue and say, here's number 27. And wait, can't read that because I haven't gotten 26 yet.
Dick, you?
Yeah, I haven't. I don't have a dog in this fight because I was never married while I was in the teams and not long thereafter. And part of that was because I bought a house with Admiral Natter, and I think he scared off all the women. So that was
We both went up to graduate school in Monterey.
Yeah.
Big mistake by the Navy.
Yeah.
We bought a house on 17 Mile Drive. We both tended bar on the Cannery Row. We occasionally went to class.
But I will say for you selectees here, part of your job is whether if you're single is knowing who in your platoon are married and what their problems might be, and if they have issues that you can help them resolve. You need to be aware of that. And that will start day one in Bud's training. Some of your fellow trainees have got wives and have got responsibilities at home, and it may interfere with training, and you may have to get involved and deconflict that. So put that on the list of things you're going to have to do beside being tough and smart and learning a new warfare profession. You've got extended responsibilities in those areas.
Anything else?
Hi there. I'm Earl Powers, and I want to thank you all for your incredible insights on what you've done and everything like that, and thank you for your service. I have a question about, can you?
It works.
I've got a question about deployments, and there are multiple deployments throughout your career. Number one, when you redeployed, did you end up going back to the same AORs or similar AORs, or were they different? And then also when you got back, how was the acclimation period in order to sort of settle back into the where you were, to the new place you were back?
That varies over the years, and it also varies over the classification of the type of missions or the countries you're acting in. So if you're talking just about Vietnam, they were basically 6-month tours. Start looking at all the rest of the world and where SEALs might have been, they varied. Some of them were military training teams, and they were spread out all over. What you did when you got there was spread out all over.
So you might have been deployed in one place, and when you came back 6 months later, someplace completely different?
So over 30 years, things changed quite a bit for me.
So when I got medevac, I came back and I was in the hospital and I got a subsisting out chit at Balboa, and lived next door to a plumber, retired, so I decided to get a job with him. Worked as a plumber until it came time to get orders again, so we went to PG school up in Monterey. But I tell people I had more fun in my whole career when I was in the hospital than out. There's some great stories there, and I won't tell them in public.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Warren Hoppy from the class of 61. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to direct the question to you. I read the account of the action in the Silver Star, and I'm wondering if you could share some memories of that day, particularly with the midshipmen, because I think it was a phenomenal situation. I don't want to embarrass you. Maybe it's something you'd rather not do, but it really struck me. This was a couple of years ago, so I probably have only a faint memory, but I think it's an impressive story.
I'd ask Dick to tell that story.
Well, they were out at night with LD&Ns, and I can't speak to I know where they were and how they got hit, but I started wondering where the hell they are about mid-morning, and then started saying, we got a problem, and couldn't find them and couldn't raise them on the radio. Fortunately, without going into a chapter and verse on this, Bob was able to get command of the SEAL support craft that was hit and set on fire, and one of his guys put out the fire and got some, but they had no radio, so he came back he drove the boat, and it was still running on step back to the base, And then we went and started picking up people who were in the perimeter while they were still alive. And again, those memories are sort of faded, but one I do recall very closely is the officer in charge was a SEAL named Jim Thames, and he was killed. And one of the guys that came back, I was in the boat, I was saying, okay, what's the situation? Because we're going back in to get him. And it was he saying, well, the lieutenant got killed. And I thought, oh my God, I've lost Bob Natter. And what am I going to tell his parents and his sister and his brothers? And you know, it was not bittersweet. It was just the other lieutenant got killed. He didn't. He was badly wounded and came through, but the other fellow got killed. And we lost 3 good Vietnamese SEALs on that operation as well. But going down that river to get those guys was fearful business. And I can't really say much more about that.
Well, the real hero is Johnny Williams, in my view. He was an enlisted kid, E4, African-American, had never learned how to swim really. And in the training, I insisted the chief take him down and with full flak jacket and boots and everything. If he had to swim 2 laps, then we'd let him deploy with us. He did. He was the guy who ran to swim back to the boat with me. The rest of it I don't remember.
Hey,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can Jim first.
No, go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Midshipman First Class Mendoza. Thank you so much for being here and sharing these insightful experiences with us. So my question is, you have all mentioned several times about how dangerous of a lifestyle and line of duty this is and the operational tempo you had during your time in service. How did you lead, or what did you do to get your men to follow you, go back out there one more time?
Oh boy. I think they were all volunteers, and we had the luxury, as you will, in the teams. Like I remember getting ready to get in a platoon there and just saying, okay, does anybody not want to go? You know, we're going to be careful, we're going to do our job, or we're going in harm's way. And if this is not something you want to do, or you've thought twice about it and don't want to do it, now's the time to say so. And they all seemed to think this was okay. And I never had an issue with it. I think they understood that we were a group. We're going over as a group and coming back as a group, and I think that kind of bound them to us. I don't think they looked at us and say, well, I'll follow him because he's a great leader. It's just that I'm on this team and I'll pull my load and I'm not going to let these guys down. So that's how I interpreted why we were so well supported by our enlisted guys.
Most SEALs want to go out more often, not less often.
Sure.
Yeah.
Most SEAls don't consider it a good op unless they've had something happen that's considered bad by the average human. So you're with volunteers. Those volunteers are extremely enthusiastic.
My take on it is in combat, you think of one thing: what's your duty? What's your responsibility? When they look at you and say, what do we do? You better have an answer. You better do something instead of nothing. And you've got, that is all you can think about. You can't think about anything else except what's your duty. That's why you're an officer. That's why you're there, and they're looking to you for your leadership. You don't have it, get another job quick.
So I hate to bring up West Point, but there's a good West Point book on leadership. And the 2 key factors for leadership are integrity and trust. And that trust is so important. You have to build that trust up with the enlisted men and the folks in your platoon. It's the lubricant that makes that relationship work. And you have to do everything you can to build up that trust. Take care of them. Well, it's already been mentioned, if they're married, make sure that if they have any issues, that you help them address that. When they do something that's positive, make sure that you recognize them. They write them up for a medal if that's warranted, or just give them a Bravo Zulu. But build that trust. You have to have that trust, so they'll be willing to go out with you. And I do remember one thing, and this is bringing this up, but it's scary and it's maybe I shouldn't even mention it, but I do remember. Now I was fortunate that I went through training with about 7 of the guys in my platoon, so they knew me, I knew them. We'd gone through training, we knew what to expect, and so on. And one of them came up to me in Vietnam and said that there was a platoon, and I'm mentioning any names, of course, that the EMs were scared to death of the platoon leader and didn't want to go out with him. And there was even some talk about killing him, according to my enlisted man. I don't know. And that's what happens when you break that trust and they don't think that you know what you're doing, you haven't taken the time to prepare and so on. Now, it all turned out fine, but it could happen. And in fact, I believe it happened quite a few times in Vietnam. You hear about the fragging, not in the SEALs, but it did happen.
I could put a little lighter tone on that. Remember coming back, we were in a SEAL sport craft extracting from the beach. There was still sporadic small fire. And I look over, and one of my guys has got one of his legs dangling over the side of the boat. I said, "Fred, what are you doing?" He said, "Lieutenant, my third tour, and I still don't have a Purple Heart." That's your SEAL.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing your stories. Having worked with Admiral Natter for a long time now, I would take exception to the fact that he's 50% crazy, because I think he's all crazy. But I'm wondering, my son one asked me, was there anything tougher in your life than being a SEAL? And I said, yeah, raising you. I'm wondering, what attribute did you take, either leadership or being a better father or husband? What did you take from the SEALs that made you better in that role in the family?
So I can just say the thing that I took is the unwillingness to quit anything. And I think I passed that on to my kids. My daughter's a great gal. She took the test to get into the nursing school at Alabama. She took it 3 times. Didn't quite make it the first time, didn't quite make it the second time, and the third time she did. And I said, man, if I didn't pass anything else on to my kids, I did pass on being persistent and tenacity.
Let me just say that I got 3 daughters. All went in the Navy. One's a graduate of this institution, one Notre Dame, one Villanova. 2 of them married to Navy SEALs, still on active duty. And I was asked at a speech once, a Navy speech, some wise guy said, "Admiral, how is it when you got 2 daughters married to Navy SEALs?" I said, "Wise guy." He says, "Well, it was kind of rough to start with, but as soon as the guys started learning how to say yes, sir, ma'am, and no, ma'am, it worked great." It's a partnership.
I think that if I had to take one thing away from the SEAL experience, if you will, it's a sense of humility. I went through training. We started out with 73 of us, and 13 of us graduated. And for reasons, I was an average operator, but I was a great trainee. I graduated first in the class. I was a record holder in track when I was here, and so training was not that hard for me. And everybody thought I was, like I said, I graduated first in the class. And there was another I was class leader as a JG, and there was another skinny little JG from the University of Maryland in our class, and he graduated last, and they almost disenrolled him. They didn't think he could cut it, and so they let him go to the teams on a probationary basis. He went to SEAL Team 2 on a probationary basis, and that SEAL is Tommy Norris. He received the Medal of Honor. So I learned right then, and all you guys that are going to BUD/S, don't forget those OCS guys that are kind of, maybe don't have your talent and maybe don't have your physical preparation. Help them out, get them through, because they may be, you never know when they're going to be the greatest thing in the world.
Good.
One more?
Yeah, one more time. One more.
Yeah, sure. You're bigger than I am.
I'm Bud Barnes. I was a SEAL pilot. I know these guys long before that. Dick Couch and I were on youngster cruise together on Eagle.
That's it.
Sandy and I were working together in 69, 70. One night I went to see him in the hospital. He wasn't there. They were going to medevac him. He went back to his unit, finished his tour. Tom Murphy and I, a little different story. We played chess, arm wrestled, and drank beer in Madrid when he was in Olmsted, Scotland. Tom's a pretty sharp guy. I thought it was kind of interesting. People talking about
crazy. We, as a SEAL pilots, always thought the SEALs were crazy. They thought we were crazy, so we had a lot in common. Anyway, there's one brief mission I want to describe. It's not with these guys, but it's the way it went. Kind of bragging rights for a SEAL pilot would be a night scramble, SEALs in contact. That was the mission to get, because it didn't get any more difficult, and that's what you look for. You look for that challenge. I remember this night, monsoon rain, we went out and broke out of it, and the SEAL boat had been shot up, and these guys were on one side of the canal, and the bad guys were on the other side of the canal, and they were dead in the water. So when we got out there, we could see some shooting, but for us, we just needed a target mark. And at night, trying to shoot rockets into a small area didn't work very well. But these door gunners we had were very precise. And I remember just telling the guy I was flying with, hey, cut 30 degrees over here, put it in this side right here, and I laid down about 2,000 rounds on the left door, and it stopped. And we went away. The interesting thing for us, what was more dangerous than anything else, was the weather. Because we were flying aircraft that were made for day, overland pops, heavily loaded at night, in the weather. So to get back to the ship and get on, we'd gotten back to the ship, and 5 minutes later, it was 0-0 with the monsoon coming through. We were in and out of this stuff. So it was kind of difficult to support these guys at night in weather. But if you get lighter, you talked about that, you can get in and out. But it was always interesting running into classmates and other guys you knew from boat school. There was never a question about not launching. When the buzzer went off, you were gone. I mean, literally within 3 minutes. That's not bragging. We were set that way. Throttles were cracked, and all we had to do was hit the trigger. Motor started turning, and off we went. We wouldn't have anything but generally some coordinates. Frequencies we may have already known. May or may not have briefed for the mission completely, because sometimes these guys are stealthy and they'll go somewhere where you know exactly where they were, but you'd find them. And it was just a lot of great camaraderie.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Admiral Natter, it's almost 5. If we have maybe one more question.
Sure. You say so, Jimmy.
Thank you. Dave Paddock, 77. Never lost the Army.
Say that louder.
You heard me. Never lost the Army. Thank you. Andy earlier asked a question about the wives and support back home. We talked about training for warfare, the camaraderie, and we've seen all that. These young midshipmen are going to experience loss of their classmate for the first time in the future. How do you and what would you suggest how they train to be able to deal with the families of the fallen?
Pull out. Go ahead, Sandy.
Well, yeah. That's so tough. I mean, I had my corpsman was killed. We had to continue. I mean, we spent time, made sure that he got sent back home. His body gets sent back home, and I don't know that in the with the tempo, operational tempo, and so on that we had, we probably didn't properly honor him at all. We did, when we got home, the leading petty officer and I went to see his widow, asked if there was anything that we could do. We took up a collection from the platoon. Wasn't much. Now there's a nice check for a widow if somebody that's killed. But I did have a guy that was killed when I was on the hostage rescue team, and I was a supervisor. I had a guy that was killed fast roping, and we did a much better job with him. I mean, we all went to the funeral. We spent time with the wife, the widow. We kept in touch with her. We talked about it. I know now they have psychologists come out and sit down and talk to you. Well, we didn't have that, but we tried to do the best we could to honor him and to continue doing what we were trained to do.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Good afternoon, I'm Tom Feeks, class of 73, and I'm the father of SO1 Patrick Feeks, Navy SEAL who was lost about 13 years ago. So to answer the question, I think as a father of a fallen SEAL, the best thing that you guys can do is, and you folks have touched on it, know your people, know who they are, okay? So when the most terrible thing happens, you lose a guy or a girl, reach out to the family, be present, include them. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be your life's work, but the SEAL community has embraced my family in a way that I could never explain. You know, the guys that were on the battlefield with them, we hear from them almost every week. It's just been a tremendous experience. It sounds terrible, you know, losing a family member, but the SEAL community has reached out and embraced us in a way that is just tremendous. And just do that. Be present. And don't forget. I'm not saying you got to call them every day, every week, every month, but every once in a while, when you lose somebody, keep touch to that family. Tell them stories about the guys. And I'm here today because the SEAL community and the Naval Academy has been extremely good to me and taking care of my son, his wife, family, and they continue to operate that way. My daughter was a Penn grad. She was a circuit worker officer. She left the Navy, came back in as a physician's assistant, and now she's a medical officer at SEAL Team 3. So again, that connection just keeps on going.
Yeah.
So please,
His son was very good.
if you have that terrible occurrence where you lose one of your people, stay connected. Stay connected to the family. Don't be afraid. I mean, I had a lot of people say, sir, I didn't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just go over and say, that was a hell of a guy. You know? And that's all you need to do.
Just want to mention, Captain Feeks, you've spoken of how the community embraced you, but I also think it's very special how you connect with all the selectees. So all the midshipmen in this room, when they completed the screening process that got them on the path to get the bills that they now have, they got to meet you at the end of it and hear about your son and learn a little something special about our community. So I just want to thank you for giving back in that. Yeah. Gentlemen, as we close it out, I'm going to reserve the right to ask a final question. Before I ask that, I want to say thank you. I think we could go on for hours. There's not a person here on their phone looking around, or you have enthralled this group with your wisdom. We could just feel the power of your experiences and stories, and just thank you for opening up and sharing them with us. But what I want to ask you is, I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you, did you doubt yourself before you went into combat, or have doubts as a leader? But I'll ask it in a different way, to the midshipmen especially. How can they gain the confidence that if they go into combat, or that they go into a tough situation, that they will make good decisions? Because I think a lot of people question, will I measure up? Will I do what's expected of me? So what can you offer to them that would help them gain the confidence that they will be that good leader, that they will make that good decision?
Tom, you want to start that?
That's a very difficult question. I would say that SEAL training in itself is going to make you ready to be a SEAL. The leadership thing comes from individuals. It's always going to be how you relate to other people, how they relate to you. With regard to taking the life of another human being, it's a personal issue. It affects some people not at all. It affects some people pretty badly. It's very hard to predict that in anybody's case. You're all here because you want to be a SEAL. That's exactly what the people up here on the stage wanted to be when we were your age. So nobody could tell me not to do it then, and I would not think that anybody in here who's gone through what you've gone through shouldn't try it. But get yourself through training, get yourself out in the field, make your decisions when the time comes.
Cindy?
Okay, when I was in the 8th grade, I had a teacher whose favorite saying was, you are what you think about. And I knew I was going to turn into a girl. But if that's true, and I really believe that is true, it means the more time you think about being a leader, study to be a leader, prepare yourself to be a leader, the better leader you're going to be. And that's the advice I have for the selectees is don't leave anything undone. Spend time getting better at your skills. Think about your skills when you're because all of you do have the ability to go out and be a leader. Yes, you're young, 22 or 23, but that's how old we were. And it works out. It really does. Despite having self-doubts, I had self-doubts. But preparation is the key. Spend time making sure that you're ready to go and that your platoon is ready to go too.
Dick?
Yeah, I might echo what Tom and Sandy just said. People have asked me, say, were you ever afraid? And I must honestly say, no, I wasn't. And that was not that I'm a brave person, it's just that there are so many details to being a combat leader. You play the what ifs game. You're on, okay, what if we get hit on the way in? What if I lose radio comms? What if one of the guys gets hurt in there? What if we run into this or that? You're constantly playing that and trying to stay ahead of what's going on. And the next thing you know, you're on the mission, you're doing the mission, you accomplish the mission, and you come back home. And when you think about it, look back on it, it might be a little scary, but basically, learn your trade and pay attention to what you're doing, and it'll kind of, at least for me, it'll kind of take care of itself.
My take is combat is pure chaos. And you have one thought, do your duty, do your duty. And it might not be the actions that you thought about before, but you've got to take an action. The people are depending on you, and you've got to do something. And don't be afraid. There's no such thing as fear. I mean, you've got to do your duty, and that's all there is to it.
Gentlemen, thank you again. Admiral, any
On behalf of all of you guys, on behalf of all of us, I would like to just say thank you very much. I'm honored to be here with these gentlemen. Thank you.